Hello and welcome to Traversing the Transition Whole School Recovery. My name is Marie Hornley and I'm joined by Nuala McNair and Jenny Turner from Derbyshire Educational Psychology Service. This video is intended to provide an overview of existing evidence on transition and change and the impact of these on children, young people and adults. We aim to present the challenges and opportunities associated with the current COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in regard to the important role that schools, parents and carers can play in supporting resilience and hope. We would like to introduce the Recovery Curriculum by Carpenter & Carpenter 2020 as a conceptual framework for helping communities to return to school in this new world. There is a tendency to talk about change and transition interchangeably, but what do each of these terms mean? Change is situational. The new site, the new boss, the new team role, or the new policy. Transition is the psychological process that people go through to come to terms with the new situation. Change is external. Transition is internal. Change is an event which may or may not be known. Transition is the process that follows, during which individuals, systems, settings, and organizations get used to, make sense of, and start to live with that change. What we are all agreed on is that change and transition demand and need a response, as they affect the whole system and everyone in that system, be it at home, school, or at work. What we do know is that when change and transition are recognised and addressed, the system can respond in an appropriate and effective way, which benefits all. In the current climate, Derbyshire EPS recognises that the term transition will have different meanings and implications for different individuals. For some, it may be transition from one phase of education to another. For others, it will mean a transition from one version of normal to another. The key message is that we need to recognise that we are all in a process of transition and that we have all experienced significant change. The first phase of this transition followed the government's stay-at-home guidance, and although this change was rapid and far-reaching, we have now become increasingly accustomed to the new normal. As more young people and school staff gradually return to on-site education in schools, further change will happen. How we manage the transition in response to the change ourselves, and how we support children and young people to cope and build their resilience and hope, is a task for us all to plan, support, and reflect on together.
The significance of the imposed change has had far-reaching implications for everyone. Although we may have started the year 2020 with a clear picture in our minds of what will happen in the next 6 months, the current pandemic has created new challenges and disrupted best-laid plans. Daily routines have been demolished. Many of us are required to stay at home, and the majority of children are no longer attending school. This happened without warning and time for preparation. The way we interact with others has been altered, and we are relying on technology for interaction, connection, learning and work. In the current circumstances, we cannot underestimate the impact of these changes on the mental health and well-being of children, young people and adults.
The information in this video is based on a range of sources of evidence, including Carpenter and Carpenter's proposed recovery curriculum. Carpenter and Carpenter discuss the range of loss that individuals are currently experiencing as a result of the pandemic. They identify 5 losses, which include a loss of routine that can lead to a sense of insecurity and associated feelings of anxiety and stress. For some children, young people or adults, having a structured day was a coping mechanism that helped them to manage their time and regulate their emotions, and the current loss of structure may well be having a significant impact. Loss of friendship and loss of social interaction may well be leading to isolation and feelings of loneliness, frustration and depression. Although we've all made efforts to maintain these relationships through digital means, the lack of physical contact, such as a hug, can never be replaced. We are all experiencing a loss of opportunity, be it through restricted activities, cancelled exams or cancelled holidays and important life events. Loss of freedom relates not only to physical movement restrictions, but also to our right to plan, dream, work, rest and play in ways that we would normally choose. These losses will vary between individuals. For some individuals, these losses will be minimal. For example, I miss my friends, but for others they may be much more complex. Anxiety, trauma and bereavement are 3 major forces associated with the pandemic that would be typically experienced individually during the lifetime. Carpenter and Carpenter recognise that the current situation is leading to many individuals experiencing all three forces simultaneously. They highlight that many children and young people are likely to be picking up on this from the adults around them too. Research has shown that high stress levels and anxiety impede individuals from learning, working, and engaging. As professionals working with children and young people, the most important thing that we can do as they return to school is to help them repair and recover through the relationships and connections with others. But first and foremost, we need to be aware of the potential impact that this current situation is having upon the mental health and well-being of school staff, parents, and carers. For more information on how trauma affects us all and for ideas on how to support our own mental health and coping at this time, please watch Traversing the Transition Part 1 Trauma and Part 2 Thriving.
Sue Ruffy from Growing Great Schools Worldwide talks about the processes involved in the normal transition cycle. Pollock and Van Rieken's transition cycle highlights the normal transition, which describes how we as individuals feel when we are involved in and moving from one settled state to another. The process of change can commonly evoke feelings of loss for the past and worries about the future. However, knowing and being aware of these feelings and thoughts can help us as individuals to monitor where we are now and help us understand why we are feeling these emotions. Learning about the wide range of emotions associated with leaving helps build perspective and understanding, which enables us to move forward. In a typical transition situation, we have access to a range of structures and strategies that help us to become settled again. For example, when transitioning from Year 6 to Year 7, schools provide a transition program. The transition phase between leaving and entering is an unknown area, where emotions often run high and extreme. The entering phase creates feelings of stress and anxiety associated with being new to the system or situation, and so can create feelings of stress and worry around building new routines, structures, and making decisions. Accessing specific strategies to address individual stresses can help us to cope, i.e., what helps you to return to a settled space once more? This framework can help us to name and make sense of the processes we are experiencing. It is also useful to return to at times of change or transition in order to acknowledge difficulties and make plans. However, we also recognize that the current situation involves an enforced transition with little opportunity for preparation.
When considering the enforced and previously never experienced transition we are currently in, Fisher's process of transition curve can provide a useful framework to illustrate individual experiences. Fisher shows the phases of transition and illustrates how varied and complex transition can be for us all, and that it often demands a new and uncharacteristic response from us as individuals, organisations, settings, and our systems. The transition curve also provides a useful framework to help us to review past and present behaviours and attitudes, and also to reassess what each setting's own core values are and were before the pandemic, thus enabling each setting to identify existing areas of strength as well as identifying stages which may present challenges.
As we all know, schools have never just been about learning, but also about emotional well-being and social interaction. It's a chance to see friends and develop our sense of self-worth and grow through connection and interaction with others. As a school community, you will have already been supporting and developing children and young people's sense of belonging to their school, and this will have enabled the vast majority to develop a sense of connectedness, relatedness, and security. This is why school communities are well placed to provide children and young people with support and strategies to cope with the experiences arising from the pandemic. We encourage all school staff to stop and think about what they already know and do to support children and young people who have experienced trauma, anxiety, and bereavement. The skills that you already have as a school team are as valuable now as they were in the past. The important message is that every staff member will play an essential role in helping children and young people to establish a new normal. Believe and acknowledge that you already have the skills to do that. Some questions that you might want to consider when planning your school's response include: what do you already do well as a school, on an individual basis, classroom level, strategic, with parent relationships, and in the community? What resources do you already have to support children and young people experiencing anxiety, loss, or trauma? What strategies do you use? What skills do your staff already have, and how can they be shared with the team? What are your core values and how do you instil these on an individual, class, and whole school and community level? How do you plan, record, and monitor response to intervention normally, and how do you encourage reflective practice? What do you already do to support transition? What do you do to cope with change, and what do pupils do to cope with change? How will you know when you're settled again, and what will that feel like? How else might settled look like for you and the school? How do you usually manage beginnings and endings in your school? How do you already build resilience through the school years to prepare young people for transition? The full list of prompt questions is included at the end of these slides and they can be downloaded from S4S.
As we've already discussed, we need to support children, young people, and adults in recovering from the loss, trauma, and anxiety that we have all experienced to some degree over the last few months. In response to this, Carpenter and Carpenter identify 5 levers of what they call the recovery curriculum. Lever 1 refers to relationships. Relationships require investment, time, and support to develop and be maintained. Our relationships have currently been affected by social distancing. We all need opportunities to interact, talk, touch, and play in order to re-establish those connections. This may not immediately be possible in schools, but we need to recognise the importance of interpersonal interaction. Lever 2 refers to community. Community is about connection and belonging. We need to listen to what has happened in communities and individual families and be prepared to respond to individual needs. The process of transition curve by Fisher can be a helpful visual aid to think about what different individuals are experiencing. Lever 3 refers to a transparent curriculum. Carpenter and Carpenter stress the importance of reassuring teaching staff, parents, children, and young people that well-being is at the core of the school priority and that gaps in learning or learning progress needs will be addressed over time once appropriate. Lever 4 refers to metacognition, which means thinking about thinking. Metacognition involves teaching individuals reflective skills, planning skills, and organisational skills that will be the building blocks for independence in learning and life. Lever 5 refers to space. This is about giving individuals the space and time to just be and to adjust. The recovery curriculum is a construct. It isn't a set program. However, by focusing on these 5 levers as a school, you will be able to support everyone on their path to recovery.
When we think of interventions or support, we like to think of these as stepping stones to recovery. It is important to reflect on what you currently do to support your own and children's well-being. You may already have a number of activities which you have used in the past, which work well, and it's okay to use these again. At times of crisis, we often feel de-skilled to help because of its unfamiliarity. But actually, some of the old, tested and trusted activities and strategies that we have used before can be equally helpful and supportive. We must also remember that children and young people are flexible and resilient and that they have the capacity to adjust to change, sometimes more easily than we as adults think or do. Research relating to trauma and crisis reminds us to be child-led and that we as adults should try not to preempt what we think children and young people might be feeling or experiencing. There are a range of whole school and class activities which you may find useful to add to your school's recovery box. We have divided the activities to reflect the 5 principles to support recovery following a trauma identified by Hopfall et al. These principles will be important to consider for supporting all individuals. The 5 principles are: promote a sense of safety, promote calming, promote a sense of self and collective efficacy, promote connectedness, promote hope. It is important that all individuals feel safe because this is an essential primary need. Schools can take proactive steps to increase sense of safety and security even in these difficult times. Individuals are likely to experience a range of either strong emotions or absence of emotions. It is important to recognise these emotions and help individuals to return to a state of calm. Individuals need to have a sense of agency, an ability to make their own decisions that will affect outcomes, even if there are limitations to these. The whole school community needs to feel empowered to take steps towards recovery as a collective. It is important that everyone in the school community feels a sense of connectedness and belonging. Whilst we all recognise the challenges associated with the pandemic, we also need to believe in a positive future to instil hope and purpose. At the end of these slides, we have included a range of ideas for activities, resources, strategies, and training packages you may have already completed in the past that you can draw on to address each of these areas.
Throughout this video, we have purposely referred to individuals rather than children and young people because the challenges associated with the pandemic affect us all. It is essential that adults working with children and young people first take care of their own mental health and well-being because, as mentioned earlier, our own anxieties can be transferred to others. The best way to re-establish a new normal in school is to use tried and tested resources and strategies. Therefore, we encourage you to reflect on what you already do well and provide you with ideas for activities and resources to add to your toolbox. The recovery curriculum is intended as a whole school approach to supporting everyone to recover from the challenges we have and continue to face. As such, the activities and approaches should apply to all children at all levels. Staff should take a child-led approach to individual needs. Try not to preempt difficulties, but rather listen to children and what their concerns are. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. Schools will have all experienced different losses and will need to tailor their approach to the needs of their school community. It will be important to think about the values and aims of your school, which were instilled before the pandemic happened. We need to remember that we are all in a period of transition and that we have all experienced loss. We should remember to be patient and kind to ourselves and others.
Thank you for listening. A copy of these slides is available on S4S where they can be downloaded. Look out for more videos coming soon on Traversing the Transition.